for today, like let's focus on kind of where we left off last time, going into the self-love, self-acceptance, self-awareness. I think is the key to all of those elements going from that. So if you kind of can just go into your journey a little bit about I know the understanding of the diagnosis and stuff was an element, but before that, maybe where did that start to like appear, and then how did it get to where it is now?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you put out a good post recently, where you were talking about elements of things to have a sort of happy, successful life, and self-awareness was like number one on the list. And
Mm.
having had an epiphany of self-awareness, I couldn't agree more. I think so many of us go through our lives not being aware that we're unaware,
Hmm.
which is a
Hmm.
really strange thing. And I think I could class myself like that, probably until, again, quite recently, as you say, pre-diagnosis, but within the last 5 years, probably. And for me, it came out of parenting. And it was a few different things. So being aware of how I was parenting my children, being aware of the fact that when I was working full time as a teacher, even before children, but more so since they came along, I just did what I had to survive. Like, work took everything out of me, and then there wasn't enough of me left to be the person I wanted to be with my children, with my husband, with anybody else. And that was it. It was just something I never seemed to be able to get round. You'd have the summer holidays. We've just had the summer holidays. That's nice, of 6 weeks of recovery. And then, when you start to feel better, your creative mind starts to come online. You start to have all these great ideas. You think, oh, great, this feels, I'm looking after myself. This feels great. I'm going to keep doing this. And then you get into the slam of September. And by like a couple of weeks in, you're just knackered again. And all the self-care stuff just disappeared off the bottom of the radar. And I began to question that. The older I got, once I had 2 children, I thought, why is this not possible? Why does it feel impossible for me to have all the things? Other people seem to be able to go to the gym after work, or like go to classes, or have hobbies. And so that was the kind of, I think that was probably the first thing that made me aware, was I'm not being able to be the parent I would like to be for my children. Why not? So, and it was that idea, like, when I have self-care, when I look after myself, when I'm able to sort of have capacity for that, I then am able to show up for the children. And then it was that kind of crazy thought where I was like, well, maybe I'm just not meant to work then, but we can't afford for me not to work. And you have all these sort of thoughts and conversations, don't you? Especially when I was thinking about leaving my teaching career. It felt impossible at one point, because it was like, well, how am I going to replace this salary? How are we possibly going to be able to live without this salary? But definitely the children were the thing that brought it into my awareness more than anything else. You see all these other people, and I know that, I mean, social media is
A highlight
everybody's
reel.
highlight reel, exactly. But I worked with colleagues who had children who were living different lives to me, and my husband at the time was a shift worker, and even he, with his shift work, seemed to have more capacity than me for having patience with the kids and stuff. So that was it, questioning why is that. And then also, from that, sort of like the door just cracked open a little bit to self-awareness. Then you start asking other things about yourself. So there was a time sort of pre all of this where I would say I was quite an angry mum. I was quite a shouty mum, and every little thing that the kids did that wasn't to my schedule, or that wasn't to my sort of idea that I had, I would be quite frustrated and quite cross with them. And I didn't want to be that person. I didn't like being that person. That was kind of what I had when I was growing up, and I didn't want to really be repeating that. But I felt stuck, and I
Hmm.
suddenly sort of thought to myself, why is it so important that she wears those shoes today? Why is it so important? And you start to, and then all of a sudden, like, you open the doors to this cascade of whys. I don't know if you've had this experience, but for me personally, I suddenly started questioning, like, everything.
Everything.
Like, why do we have to be on time for this? Why am I feeling so panicked about XYZ? Whose expectations am I trying to live up to here? And it was just like mind blowing, because all of a sudden you like, the whole world as you know it starts to change round about you, when you're like, well, wait a minute, we're living in a construct. I don't want to like conspiracy theory about it, but you start to think, well, who am I doing these things for? It's not
Yeah.
benefiting me and it's not benefiting them. So why are we doing it?
Yeah.
And we haven't quite like run off to the forest to live in a treehouse or anything and sort of completely unplugged from society. But it does start to question. You do start to question a little bit, sort of, how much of this do I have to do, and is there a different way that I could live?
Yeah. And I think that that whole thing there with the questioning, like, it's just the moment you start to get curious, the moment you start to ask the questions, the moment that like starts to expand
Yeah,
and other options or like thought processes come into play, which, oh, actually, does that have to be like that, and does that have to add up to that? And so that, like, that bringing that curiosity is massive, isn't it? I think.
huge. The curiosity is everything, because I think so many of us just don't really question life. We kind of go, oh yeah, we, depending on what our background and our circumstances have been, we're almost like pre-programmed to this, the way that we're going to live our lives. And I was the first one in my family to go to university, so it's not like that was like that was following a trail, but it was just, I don't remember when I had the moment of it's primary school, secondary school, university for me. That would just seem to be the path that I was destined to follow, and I never questioned it. I never thought about leaving school and not doing university. That it just didn't feel like it was an option, to do anything else. But again, I don't know why, because it's not like I was following my parents' footsteps or anything. So I don't know where that came from. And then it's that kind of like, find a nice partner, have a family. Like, this is the way we're supposed to go as humans. And many people don't really question that, because it's kind of, again, depending on the environment you're in, that's kind of what you see people round about you doing. If you're doing anything like that, it might be considered a bit odd or strange, or like, but how are you going to pay for things if you don't have a conventional job? And we're so caught up in that. And actually, I really believe now that there's absolutely more to life than getting up and working for somebody else every day to make them money. There's definitely
Yeah.
more to life than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, so with, so going, and again, it is that conventional line. It's that environment and that, like, almost like a path, like, this is the path that's laid out for you, and this is the path, and until you start to question that path
Yeah,
and go down the, oh, okay, well, why do I have to do that, and why do I have to do that, and why isn't it this way, that's when you can start to like kind of create your own path type thing.
definitely.
um
I think sometimes there also has to be a trigger event that makes you want to question it also.
oh yeah.
Um, for me, I don't know what it would be, what it would have been. Probably, I think probably having the kids was like a sort of butterfly moment, in terms of, because then you start to question the parenting that you had as a child, depending on sort of what circumstances you grew up in. You might be trying to emulate your own parents, or trying to not be like your own parents, or take elements from all sorts of different places. I think that potentially for me was where I started to think, okay, well, how can I not parent in that way? How can I do things differently? I mean, we talked before. I had quite a significant spell of burnout, and I think that was the realization I had in that moment, where I was like, I can't continue in my career. I'm going to have to do something else. And so it forces you down a path to have to think differently, because I literally couldn't continue the way that I did. And I think that can happen for people in a lot of different ways, can't it? In terms of like family circumstances, or relationships changing, or illness in the family, or something will happen where it's like, wait a minute, you start to sort of question everything. And that's something that I've pondered on, sort of like, it's almost like, how do you break people free from the matrix to show them that there is another way? And I know that sounds a little bit like tinfoil hat time, but I see so many people who are just sort of going along in their lives, and they're not like necessarily happy or satisfied, but they've never thought about life being a different way. And I want to try and find a way to have conversations with people where it's like, you just crack that door open a little bit, where they think, oh, wait a minute, maybe I could have a different life. Maybe I deserve to have a different life. Sort of starting those conversations with people, I think that would be so life-changing for so many people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost like sometimes all of those things that like have been in the past need to happen to add up, or have that moment, that trigger moment, or it all adds up to a trigger moment, and then it's like that switch can then be made. So it's having those little bits of information dripped in, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it compiles, and you're like, oh, okay, like this can now be different. So
Yeah.
for you, having that, like the burnout, and then the awareness of this isn't right for me,
Hmm.
and I need to do something about it. Like, what was that, like that acceptance like, and what kind of things were put in place to, like, with the self, for that to go forward?
So that it was a really interesting moment, and I can't remember if I shared last time. I might have done that. It was that realization when somebody said to me, "What do you do to relax?" And I laughed and went, "What do you mean? What do I do to relax?" And they were like, and it was like the crossing of two worlds. They couldn't understand why I didn't know how to relax and what I did to relax, and I was like, "Why would you expect me to know that about myself?" And it was that sort of sudden moment of, oh, there's a different way. Oh my gosh, other people know how to relax and like actually take time to do that. So that was a real kind of light bulb for me at that point, in terms of maybe this is something I should be doing for myself. And it was around about that time that I started walking. I'm wanting to hit a step goal every day, just to give myself a little sense of achievement. And again, it's like tiny little steps that snowball from there. So it was doing the 10,000 steps a day, and that meant sometimes going out and having some time to walk on my own, with an audiobook or a podcast. And from there, you're starting to pick up information from the audiobooks and the podcasts. I wasn't necessarily listening to like how to fix your life type stuff, but it was like the sort of conversations that we're having now, in terms of like how people live in different ways, and what it's like to look after yourself, and how to not be a people pleaser anymore, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And like all of those little light bulb moments where it's like, oh, hold on, I don't have to allow people to speak to me that way, or I can have dreams and aspirations that I don't know how I'm going to get there yet, but I really want this thing. I can't see the path in front of me, but it's okay to want that thing, and then figure it out as you go. And that was kind of, it felt really liberating. And during that time where I was signed off and I handed my notice in to my full-time job, and I had nothing else to go to at that time, and that was terrifying. I remember walking into the kitchen and saying to my husband, I need to resign from this job. I can't go back like full-time in September. And even if, it's just not going to work for me there. And him just being amazing in that moment and being like, okay, so that's what you feel you need to do, we'll figure it out. And that's totally not him. Like, he's an absolute worrier about money and security and stuff. So for him to show up like that for me in that moment was really great. But having handed my notice in, and then thinking, oh my God, my last paycheck is going to be August, what do I do? And then just almost like falling back and having complete trust in the universe. And that happened to me again within the course of that year. Because I took on another very part-time job, which also wasn't working out for me. And again, it was cut a long story short, they wanted to change the terms and conditions of the contract that I'd signed. I said no. They said, if you don't accept it, we're going to have to let you go. And I was like, all right, fine. And again, it was that kind of, I just knew deep within my soul, this is the right thing to do. Don't worry, something else is going to come along. And the job that I've got now then came along at just the right time. Finished that other job, got this job. But the act of doing that and going, no, I'm going to do this because this is what's right for me, even though to everybody around about me it looked like the craziest, like, why are you resigning from a perfectly good job? What are you doing? I just knew within myself. It was really liberating. And it was those little acts of building self-trust.
Yeah, that trust. Yeah.
This is right, even though I don't know what the next step is yet, but I'm going to do this, and I know that it's the right thing for me. And to then see that come to fruition, oh my God, it's so affirming. And then it gives you that little bit of confidence to be like, where else can I do that in my life? Where else can I trust myself to make the right decision?
Yeah, that there, having the courage to be like, no, this isn't for me, and I need to do something about it. And then having that, like, trust in the universe, it's almost like letting go of the fear, like facing the fear and then letting go of the fear, because
Yeah,
making big moves like that brings, like like no security, fear of what's going to happen, all of that. But once you let go of that fear, it allows for the abundance to like come in. So
Yeah.
if you're blocking it with fear, that's not going to be able to come in. But like once you've let go and be like, yeah, I do this for myself because this, like you said, you felt it in your soul,
Yeah.
and then that then comes from that. So yeah, that must have been like a magical thing to experience, and then that evidence, building that evidence that,
Yeah.
oh my god, actually if I do this and then this happens and then I say no and put my boundaries up and
Yeah.
another thing comes in, it's that continuous like building of evidence that
Yeah.
actually this is the path that I'm laying out for myself, and it's because I trusted myself.
Yeah. It's so liberating. And, as somebody who has a brain that thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks, my husband and I trying to make a decision about anything is terrible, because it's like we've got to have felt out all the different options to see which one feels right first. It's terrible. And so to then have the courage to do that sort of thing and make that big decision, when it was like, well, but what if we don't have any, there's all the what if questions. And I try and talk to the children about what if questions and how they're actually, there's no point in having what if questions in a lot of circumstances, because they just keep us feeling stuck. I remember sitting that, just I can remember the feeling distinctly. I'm going to tell them no, and if they say that they want me to leave, and I have my contract will run out at Easter, then that's on them. And it just felt like such a big yes, like, yes, this is the right thing to do. It is totally freeing. And I'm not advocating for anybody out there to like just suddenly quit their jobs and
It's a process, isn't it? Like a process that happens.
process.
Yeah,
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 absolutely. But it, like you say, it then leads you to go in and go, right, okay, well, what else? What other, and it could be little tiny decisions. What other little tiny decisions can I make where I definitely feel one way or the other what decision I should be making here, and I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to trust it, even if people around about you are going, "What are you talking about? Why are you doing that? I wouldn't do that." It's that it's building that inner authority that what is right for you in your life, and it also then builds that self-validation. So you're not looking for that external. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? Well, I'm going to go with you said, because you're usually the most logical person or whatever. You are believing in your own ability to make those decisions. And ultimately, that self-validation is where happiness comes from. It comes from within.
yeah.
And when you can then live sort of authentically in the world and not really care whether people like it or not, or validate it or not, that is where true satisfaction lives, I think.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Like that, it's like sourcing externally is it doesn't bring anything back. Sourcing internally brings everything you need. Like
Yeah.
and that's like that whole sense of like looking for the answers outside of you. Just it doesn't bring the answers. It gives someone else's point of view, and that
Yeah.
point of view is never going to be. It needs to come within. It needs to be that like taking back control and coming back from you. But the way that society is like built is to be like taking authority from others and taking like this is the way and this is how it should be and this is and then that's like from that young age
Yeah.
you kind of forget to question things. You forget to put in those, oh actually does this feel right to me, and is this actually what I want,
Yeah.
and all of those things. So let's take it back to that self-care. So you started walking,
Yeah.
and that was your way of like giving you time, relaxing. And then from that, has anything else cropped up along the way? Like, what is there anything else you put in place for that?
So, I mean, the walking is still a big one. I still do that now. But my hair, actually, it was August last year where I got it all chopped off. I used to have longer hair. I used to wear it in a ponytail. I wore it in a ponytail every day because it would just the sensory overload of wearing it down was too overstimulating for me. So I was wearing it in a ponytail, and it might seem like such a simple thing, but I decided to just go for a pixie cut. Didn't know what it was going to look like. Didn't know how it was going to be on my face. But it was something that I wanted to be able to do for myself, because I was washing it every 2 days and then putting it up. And it was such an effort to wash, condition, dry. It just, at a time where I felt like I didn't have a lot of energy to give, I thought I need to cut something out of my own self-care routine in order to allow other stuff to come in. I didn't have a skincare routine. I've got 2 girls that are very into skincare routines, and they're teaching me stuff about skincare that at nearly 40 I had no idea about. But I was looking for a way where I could look after myself better, and I thought, if I make this a 5-minute job every day, that actually gives me time to condition it every time I wash it, to actually take some time to do a skincare routine for my face, to actually take some time to moisturize and be able to moisturize my body. And they were all things that I'd never done before. But I thought, if I can show myself that I'm worthy of those little tiny acts of self-care, it's just building that trust in yourself. So I did it. I went and chopped it all off. Thankfully, the result's been quite good. It does kind of set my face, and I'm happy with it. But my husband and my youngest daughter, for quite some time, were both stunned by it. They were like, "Can't believe that you've chopped all your hair off. Oh my God." And my eldest, she like championed it from the beginning. She thought it was a great thing for me to do. But it took them both quite a long time to get used to. And it was actually a little bit of a bone of contention with my husband for a little while, because my viewpoint on it, and this may well be a kind of autistic black and white thinking perspective, but I was like, I'm doing this for me. I don't care whether anyone else likes it or not. I'm doing this because I know the benefits it's going to bring for me in the long run, and therefore the benefits that will bring for everybody else, because I will feel happier and whatever. And he kind of took it very personally, and he was like, I can't believe that you're saying that you would do whatever you want to your body and you wouldn't consider how I'd feel about it, like as your partner. And we were just at different perspectives.
Yeah.
He felt like I was almost disregarding him and disrespecting him in my decisions. And that was a difficult time to sort of try and rectify that, because I still stand steadfast in the fact that I made the decision for me and my well-being, and therefore that would benefit everybody else because I was feeling better. And he was still sort of that, but you didn't think about whether I'd like it or not. And it was like, well, why should I care whether you like it or not? Why should my hate? You know what I mean?
Why should an external thing like that's
exactly?
It's an internal thing for you, but it's an external thing for the world. So like it shouldn't. Yeah.
But he kind of just felt a little bit not part of that sort of decision. I feel like he felt disregarded. So that was an interesting perspective at the time. I think we kind of worked through it, and I would still prefer I had longer hair, but he's, it's all good. We've worked out. But it was interesting having that contrast with somebody so close.
Mm-hmm.
That idea that we have made this decision to create a life together, and the decisions that we make do have an impact on other people. But again, it's a combination of considering the other person in your decision, but then the other person also considering why that's important to them. Why does that matter? Do you know what I mean? It's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, I also started getting my nails done. I was never a girly girl. I still wouldn't consider myself a girly girl, but I went and got some gel on my nails just because I thought, I'm going to look after myself, get my nails done. And I also I quite like the way I look when I have mascara on, but I can't stand doing the mascara and taking it off every day. So I asked the lady, sort of, what can I do to make my lashes look nice? And she said, well, you could get a lift and tint. And I did that for a little while. And then I went, it's not quite doing what I want for me. And she was like, well, we can put little falsies on. So I started to get my lashes done as well. And that makes me sound terribly vain, but it's really helped the way I show up in the world, because my lashes are done, my nails are done. I feel nice. I feel like I'm doing nice things for myself. I get my hair done every 6 weeks now. I get it, to keep it short and whatever. And it's those little things that not everybody has the privilege of being able to do financially. Totally get it. But for me, those are my little ways that I'm able to show up and show myself that I matter. And that is such a huge difference to just how I present in the world. I'm much happier and more confident now because I've done these little things for myself.
And by allowing yourself, you brought awareness to the fact that like the hair was serving no purpose. It was actually taking more time than you actually wanted or needed. So you like eliminated a distraction that wasn't serving you and put something in place that then was serving you. So it's finding those things, isn't it? It's like, and they can be little tiny things here or there, or they can be bigger things, and it's just a case of, actually, does this serve me, and does this take my time and energy, and can that be purpose, like put somewhere else and used to a better purpose?
Exactly. It's almost like sort of analysing your daily routine or again, to sound a little bit autistic about it, it's like taking a process and going, how can I make this better? How can I make it more efficient? How can I make this work for me? And a lot of people don't really realise there are aspects of their lives that they can do that with. In some ways, that in some circumstances that might be big things, like looking at how a relationship functions and is this actually still serving us? Or it could be little things like that. I have little processes in the house. Wow, I sound I can hear myself saying that.
I
But
think
like,
I think the more processes you can put in place, the
yeah,
more streamlined you can make things, the more time you can then create, like, to do the things that you want to be doing.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And having self-acceptance in a way, that's been a big one for me, having self-acceptance that the way that I do things is the way that I do things because I need them to be that way, because that's the way my brain is wired. And not constantly like fighting against myself all the time. Like, why do I have to have this routine for doing the washing? Or why do I have to, it's not so much questioning in a negative sense, like, oh, I wish I didn't have this anymore, or other people don't have to do this. It's like, well, I do, because this is how my brain works. And actually, when you can accept it and go with it, it's like a weight lifts off your shoulders, because you're not suddenly trying to conform to these unrealistic expectations that you're putting on yourself, because you question, where is this expectation coming from? Why
Mhm.
do I want things to be different? Why am I not happy and satisfied with the way things are for me? And that, I mean, those are big questions when you start sort of thinking about answering those. But they ultimately lead to that place of self-acceptance and happiness and satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah. So it that again, it's trying to really narrow down and understand where that um has come from and why it's there. So actually, and it comes sometimes down to comparison as well.
Yeah,
So like comparison with society, comparison with other people, comparison with like social media or the way the world is meant to work,
yeah,
and once that's like not put into the decision making actually becomes a lot more authentic and easier.
absolutely. I mean, again, to talk about a boring domestic thing, I quite like my house to be neat and tidy and clean. And it's not always like that. It's not often like that, actually, living in a house with other people. But and I've really questioned where that's come from. Is it because of people, will people be judging me when they come into my house? And they for a little while that was part of it, but actually what I realized was that for my brain to function optimally, I need to be in a clean, tidy, and organized space, because then I'm not worrying about how, having to do extra jobs in order to get the environment the way I need it to be. So that I can live with, because it's not coming from a societal expectation. It's not coming because I think my mother-in-law is going to come over and judge me. It's coming from, I need this because my brain functions better when my
Yeah,
environment looks like this. And that's
yeah,
okay. I can accept that. That's fine. It's not for anybody else. It's for me. And that, that I'm happy with that. I can live with that.
yeah. And then that's the awareness, that's the understanding that that's actually giving to yourself, like
Yeah.
having that environment set the way, like for maximum function
Yeah.
is then going to free up more time, more space to do those other things.
Exactly that. Yeah. Spot
Yeah,
on.
yeah, cool. So for somebody that's like going on their journey of understanding themselves, would you like pinpoint any main things that come into play, do you think? Like, I know it's an individual journey, but like, is there any like the bringing the awareness and then I guess understanding the 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 things that could then aid that rather than take from that?
Yeah.
But is there any anything that you think is in particular important to understand that?
I think probably there's two things that came to mind there. I would think um, where you find yourself judging other people, bring some awareness to that. Why,
Hmm.
if you're judging other people for the way that they're living or the way that there are any aspects of another person's life, why? Where has that judgment come from? And ultimately, are you then judging yourself? That's a reflection of how you
Yeah,
feel about something.
yeah,
Where has that come from? What is that? What purpose is that serving for you? Judging that person, having that opinion. Where does it come from? Why is it there? And secondly, if you can pinpoint areas of your life where there are where you're dissatisfied or you're unhappy those are good places to start asking questions. What is it I'm unhappy about in terms of XYZ? What would make me happy with XYZ? Why am I not doing XYZ to make me happy? So those are, again, they're big questions, but they're two good places to start in terms of like figuring out what's happening with that little voice in your head, where that's come from, and how you can change things to make sure that you're ultimately leading a more satisfying life for yourself.
Yeah, I think that first thing that you said is vital. That the judging, and if you can then reflect that judging back to yourself, it's telling you something internally,
Yeah,
and then that's coming from within, and it's actually nothing to do with what that person's doing or how that's being perceived. It's actually from within yourself. So
yeah.
yeah, if you can, that's huge. That's a massive area to dive into.
We're all we can all be judgy Judies at times. Do you know what I mean? And we do find ourselves sort of. I'm better at catching myself in the moment though.
Yeah,
If I see myself, if I'm judging somebody about something, I'm better at seeing the fact that I'm doing that and just catching it. Again, awareness, being like, okay, I'm judging that person for that. Where's that come from? Is it
yeah,
because I'm tired and grumpy? Is it because I'm worried that people will judge me for the same thing? Um, And fascinatingly, just in a side note to that, I often judge people who are not aware of the people around about them, people who are seemingly selfish or take up space or time that get in my way, driving or out shopping or whatever. And having reflected on that, that comes back to me because I haven't felt worthy to be able to take up that time or space. I'm always the person in the queue that's like trying to get my change the quickest because I know there's people behind me waiting to get served, or at the petrol station trying to be really efficient because there's a queue of cars, like, and it's because I didn't feel worthy to take up that space.
yeah.
And so I would judge other people that don't have that same worry and like will take their time over doing things. And that's a really interesting one to reflect on because you start to go, well, why can't I? Why am I not worthy to take up the same space as everybody else? Where's that voice coming from? Why,
Mhm.
and then that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, yeah, but it's a hard journey. It's a really hard journey, but it's a beautiful journey. And
Definitely.
like piecing these things together, and yeah, it is that self like love, that self worth, and growing in all those different areas, and being like, actually, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's yeah, yeah, magic. Thank you for sharing all that today.
You're so welcome. It's always a complete joy to come on and have these conversations with you.
Yeah, I just feel like if somebody can watch this and understand that where they are is where they're meant to be,
Yeah.
and just by asking a question and sitting with the answer for a while, and then putting in little action steps that are possible, and then it's that like continuous journey of learning and growing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, George.